they're very nice
You're
thoughts.
absolutely right.
I had a
You guys
great
come
day
all day
yesterday.
long. You're
Here's April 18th. We're looking at 6:05. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll take a roll call. Councilmember Gully.
Here.
Councilmember, oh my gosh. Councilmember Garrett, I
Here.
Councilmember Parator.
Here.
Councilmember Cummings.
Here.
Councilmember December.
Present.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Here.
Council President Mantello. We have all 7 present. We will now open it up to the public forum. If anyone would like to speak on anything on the agenda, the mic is yours. We would just ask that you state your name and address, please. Anything on the agenda? Yes.
Mention something very
Please.
important for the council. I think it's really important. We hear this frequently,
The mic.
to use the microphones, because I know that everybody can generally hear up here, but I know sometimes people in the back can't hear. So it might be loud enough to you, but it's certainly not everybody else. Just a gentle reminder.
Thank you, Mr. Saka. Thank you. I am going to, at the request of a couple folks, make an executive decision by bumping up our task force on sustainability to the first item on the agenda for the pleasure of meeting a couple folks in the audience to allow them if council members have any questions. So ordinance 36. If we could hit that one first, ordinance 36 is an ordinance appointing members to the Joint Task Force on Sustainability. Councilmember Kennedy, Council President Mantello, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Parator, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Garrett and Councilmember Cummings. We'll go to ordinance 36. I'll hand it off to Councilmember Kennedy. Why don't you just give just a little background, where it came from? It's been essentially stagnant. We're reviving it. Why are we reviving it? And then we'll talk about the candidates that are proposed to be on the committee. Okay?
Yeah.
Do you mind using your mic? Sorry. You have one, I believe, right? Or is that yours, Mark? Okay.
I get that.
I'm gonna ask Councilmember Cummings to talk more about why the Sustainability Task Force was created and the purpose. But essentially, we as a city and we as society, I think, are becoming more sustainability aware or conscious, and this is an effort to formalize and work on possibly putting together a climate plan for the city and helping the city achieve the designation of climate smart community status as designated by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And I will give the floor to Anasha Cummings.
All right, Councilmember Cummings, let's talk about this. And, you know, the history, I actually was very surprised that nothing had been done at the time it was proposed. So there had to have been a thinking back then. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool.
So, a few years ago, the then council started by declaring Troy as a climate smart community, which is really just an intention, stating that we as a city would like to think about the effects of climate change and what we can do to both mitigate our contributions to it and the effects it may have on us as a river city prone to flooding and many other possible impacts. And so the initial declaration was nice, but then the trick is making sure that the work gets done both to study what our impacts are and what we can do to reduce them. Group members from the task force and others certainly, and members of the administration have certainly continued to move some of the projects forward. Most importantly, the municipal solar array, which is scattered across a few sites in the city. That being said, I think there's a tremendous amount of work to be done, and there's a tremendous group of passionate citizens of Troy who care deeply about this issue and who are, by evidenced by the submissions that we got, are ready and eager to help us grapple with these issues and figure out what we can do as a city. I think often we think about these global scale issues as issues that are dealt with at the national level or dealt with at even at the international level, but often they're really best dealt with at the local level where we can have direct impact on where we get our energy, how our buildings are weatherized, the way in which energy is being used and where it's coming from, as well as, again, the ways in which we guard ourselves against the possible impacts of flooding and other extreme weather and impacts of the uncertainty of the climate. So that being said, this task force is structured to have 9 members, a representative from the mayor's office, a representative from the city council, or to the city council, and then a chair, and then 3 citizens and 3, up to 3 citizens and up to 3 staff members, so that it can be a collaborative group, both drawing on the energy and expertise from the citizenry, as well as tying into municipal operations. So over the last few weeks, we gathered resumes and interest from a broad portion of the public. I think everybody's had a chance to review the resumes and make some phone calls. And I think it'd be good to talk a little bit about the possible members to be on the task force. The only thing I'll add is that, at least from my perspective, the priorities initially for this task force
That would be helpful.
would be focused around energy, both in terms of building retrofits and weatherization, what we can do to be more efficient as a city. I think that's something that has a lot of low-hanging fruit in a city like this with a lot of old buildings, old leaky buildings, where we can both be mitigating and reducing our impact, as well as saving people a lot of money in their utility bills. If we have some good comprehensive ideas about how to deal with that. And the other is where we get our energy from. In particular, New York State has started a program called Community Choice Aggregation, which allows us to take some leadership in where our energy comes from as a city. It's a complicated program, and I think it needs some focused study to figure out how it can best be used here, if it's a good fit for us. And then, let's see, broader, I think there is this sort of checklist of programs a city like ours can take that the state helps provide and helps provide some guidance on. It'd be great if the task force could help go through that along with the administration, because when we advance ourselves along that program, it also opens up new funding opportunities and new grant opportunities for the city.
Yeah.
Awesome.
President?
Yep,
So-
thank you, Councilmember Cummings. Councilmember Kenny.
So in building upon the city recently achieving their clean energy community status, which there is overlap between the clean energy community status and the climate smart community status, both recognized by the state in initiatives to modernize and make our operations more efficient as a city. We arrived at 5 members that we seek to appoint, 2 of which are currently serving in their full-time capacity as sustainability coordinators and want to donate their expertise to the city. The others have background, one of them has background in architecture and creating net zero building footprints, all of which have extensive community connections, which we thought that was important. We essentially took the most qualified and experienced in resumes and how they applied to the city code and the purpose and the intent and the powers and duties as they're outlined in city code. And then the 5th member that we chose served as the chairperson for the Sustainability Task Force for RPI, and also served in similar functions as in line with sustainability and waste reduction. So we're definitely happy with, we wish there could be more spots because we had roughly 12 all very qualified candidates, and we invited most of them to continue their efforts and at least be involved in what the Sustainability Task Force works on. But that being said, I'll just conclude my statements in that we're very thankful and grateful for the public interest and everybody that wanted to be a part of this.
And, I was pleasantly surprised, Councilmember Kennedy, at the folks who volunteered, sent their their resumes to Mara. And there really is a wealth of knowledge. So I guess, I certainly don't want to discourage the other folks. And as you said, let's encourage them somehow to be a part maybe of another committee. As you mentioned, I think on our agenda tonight is to look at the Environmental Conservation Commission, and maybe we can steer them in that direction. At the same time, utilize their background, their expertise for this particular sustainability task force.
Council President?
Yeah.
I'll just also mention that as designed, the meetings of this task force are meant to be open to the public and participatory. So to the extent people want to be involved, I think they're welcome to be involved. That'll be somewhat up to the task force to decide how that's structured. But I imagine that if there's someone who has something to offer, it won't be turned away.
And I guess, the other thing, how will the task force, or how do you envision it maybe jiving with the comprehensive plan? I mean, we know that, that's just a plan, and at the same time, you have the zoning update. How's that all going to jive together?
Yeah, so there were certainly at least one chapter in the comprehensive plan sort of directly focused on sustainability. That being said, I think there is opportunity for the group, if they desire, to help develop sort of long-term climate planning. Certainly, I think the group that did our plan so far was very cognizant of these issues and included some good recommendations with regard to adaptation and making sure that, for example, we leave buffers along flood-prone areas and making sure that it won't be likely to, floods won't be likely to cause as much property damage and other long-term effects.
I see two of our candidates are in the office, they're in the audience. Would you like to add anything, Gary and Kiana, I believe? Connie, I'm so sorry. Is there anything you wanted to add in terms of, kind of what you see the task force, and I hate to put you on the spot, and you don't even need to, you do need to come to the mic so everybody can hear you, but just how you envision your workings, your background with the task force. I think that'd be really helpful.
Hi. So my name's Kiani Conley-Wilson. I graduated from RPI in 2017 with a Sustainability Studies degree.
Speak right into it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Everyone get my name and everything?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, awesome. So like TJ said, I served on the Student Sustainability Task Force for 2 years, and I started a whole bunch of projects, and there's a couple that I'm still running. For example, with Sodexo, we did a greening Sodexo's RPI's hospitality service. We did included in all of that. So we started off a whole bunch of different initiatives with them. They're still running composting and recycling their oil and stuff like that. So, and then I also worked as an independent consultant for Sirius, which is a nonprofit that does corporate sustainability. So I did a lot of research on disclosures and especially food issues and deforestation. So I have experience in that. So definitely good at developing reports and reasons for going in a specific direction or not. And now I work for the Research Foundation of City Poly, so I do a lot of data analysis and stuff like that for them. So I just think I can bring a bunch of different ideas, probably bring in some RPI students as well. Just work together with a whole bunch of people as well.
Great. We truly appreciate your volunteerism, and I hope I'm sure it's going to be a very active committee, so we look forward to working with you, and thank you for volunteering. We appreciate it. Did you want to add anything, Gary? Cool.
Thank you. First of all, I appreciate the nomination of the committee. I am RPI class of 70. As a contrast, I had spent something like 17 years in Troy between 1966 when I arrived and 1984 when I left for 27 years in the DC area and came back in 2011. So I've seen some contrasting perspectives. As a system engineer, most of my time was actually spent in transportation systems, it turned out. But my view was actually expressed pretty well in a panel that Joe Fong and I had over at the County Historical Society week ago Thursday. We were talking about the old battles that we had with the bridges in Troy. And in fact, I'm appearing with Joe and others tomorrow night over at the Center of Gravity on a similar topic. But my view is basically of ecological complexity. And what I mean by that is that, of course, many things are interrelated. And what Troy is, what Troy does, how much energy it consumes is very much related to its urban structure and its place in the environment and the economy. Now, I happen to believe that environmental conservation and urban conservation are going to be consistent with Troy's economic future. But I think as a practical matter, we just have to sit down and think, well, what are we going to prioritize? There's so many things we could be looking at. And I think many of the decisions that will affect just energy consumption are also critical to economic development, or attracting more population, or utilizing our water for historic preservation. I also happen to be on the board of the Hudson Mohawk Industrial Gateway. And I think publicizing our industrial past and linking it with our technological future is very important. So I have a number of views that I don't want to bore you with. I think you just have to get settled down with the committee and decide what is it we can do effectively with the time we have. So I look forward to doing that. Thank you.
Awesome. And we won't ask your opinion on One Monument Square right now, okay? So, all right, the third candidate, TJ,
So,
Was that,
council member, do we have the third?
yeah, so, I think,
I'll be on.
I think Gary initially, was proposed to be
Your
the
advice.
representative to the council, is that?
I thought it was, John.
Yeah, so there's a few here. I just want to make sure we go through all the names.
Let's go
And
through
structure
these.
it. So I think the idea is that Gary's willing to step up to be the representative of the council and sort of be the person responsible to reporting back to us and
Okay,
making sure that we're apprised as things are going on. That being said, obviously TJ, as the chair of the planning committee, will also be on there in an
advisory.
advisory capacity.
Yep.
County, and then, yeah, there are a few other, let's see.
I got it right here.
So, John Johansson,
Right,
he is the architect background mentioned previously, and also a great sustainability thinker. He does presentations on this, very, very in-depth work on climate change and also on pretty good at data visualization and mapping and GIS and those other things. So I think he's going to be a useful resource on the task force. And then
Yeah, John Johansson, he also was involved with the Solarize Troy effort.
Yeah.
okay,
He's been, a project manager on several other large-scale projects, and he owns a large number of properties throughout the city as well that he's working on making more energy efficient and sustainable. So I think with that diverse background, he brings what we need to the table.
Great.
okay.
And
You wanna-
then the third voting member.
Well, we have
Michelle
three-
Rogat.
We have three
Right.
citizen appointees who live in the city appointed by the council.
Right.
So we have our three.
No, so the first, Gary will be the representative of the council, and then there'll be.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
okay.
so all right, of the
County and
three,
John.
John Johansson, Michelle
Okay,
Rogat,
yep,
and Katie
Katie
Trombley will be the three voting members.
okay. And Katie,
Who's the third? Say it again.
here's how it works. I have the legislation in front of me, so just, right. So the representative of the council, that's going to be Gary. Then we have, obviously, the advisory. Then we have three citizen appointees, which will be the three you just mentioned. Correct?
Yes.
Keani, Michelle, and Katie.
Correct.
Michelle and Katie.
John Johansson.
Yep.
Well,
The three voting members will be John Johansson,
Mhm.
Michelle Rogat,
Mhm.
and Katie Tremblay. The non-voting member will be Kiani Conley Wilson. And there's a second non-voting member, Steve Libo.
Lebo.
Lebo.
L-E.
Eliabo.
Okay. Mayor, do you have a time frame when you're looking to be for your folks? I'm just curious.
We started those discussions internally, and I got a few people who are a few others on the line, trying to line up.
And obviously, if you want to look at the folks that applied for the council as a potential candidate for one of your appointees, Mara could,
They're
give
supposed to be
you.
city employees.
Their city, but I thought you had one rep outside the city, no?
Yeah, there's.
He can appoint up to 3 advisory members from outside the
That's
city.
correct.
If he wants to.
So
But
if
that's-
you
That's
wanted,
sort of as a as-needed basis, and I think the hope would be that that'll be, as the work develops, if we find that a particular expertise is needed to be added to the advisory committee,
okay,
we should do that. at
whatever, I was just curious, yep, cool. And then,
Yeah, so on that discussion, can I make a motion
Sure.
to amend the legislation to
yep,
add
to
the
add,
That's fine.
6 names?
we have a motion on the table, I'd be happy to second it. Further discussion? I would just ask, obviously, keep us in the loop. And Gary, you essentially will be our representative, so we'll provide you all of our contacts and all of that so you can keep us in the loop. Okay?
Great.
And Councilmember Kennedy, you'll obviously be on top of it as an advisory member. Okay, cool. All right, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so
That was
we,
on the amendment, which was.
That was on the amendment.
that's on the amendment, on the amended ordinance of 36. Do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Cummings, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember December, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so ordinance 36 passes, 7 ayes, 0 nays. Congratulations, we look forward to working with both of you. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, let's hit ordinance 27. Ordinance 27, ordinance declaring certain city-owned property as surplus and directing the comptroller to dispose of said property. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Parator, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Garrett. I have to get used to saying your last name now. Discussion on this? I think it's pretty straightforward. Thank you for the memo. It's pretty clear, Dan. Discussion? Did you have any questions?
Yeah, just,
Councilmember Cummings?
it's a pretty random list of things. Is it forfeit?
Oh, yeah, the surplus.
Evident?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's not property.
Well, that's a good list there.
You know what, I did have one question, and maybe, Monica or, the mayor could answer this regarding, like, I noticed that there was a PlayStation, some Matchbox toy cars. Some of the, like, we'll say, less monetarily wise ones. I was just wondering, could we possibly just look to donate that to the Boys and Girls Club, or we have to? If we declared it surplus and then donated it even,
It's a noble thought, but Article 8 of the New York State Constitution precludes us from giving away city resources.
okay,
Sorry.
yeah. But what if
Where's it
they bought them, I mean, when they go for surplus, is it the highest bidder? Or what if the Boys and Girls Club said, I'll buy A, B, and C for $1?
I suspect it's, I'm not familiar with the disposition procedures in that level of detail, but my guess would be that it goes to the highest bidder.
Council President.
And that we would probably want to start trying to sell it in a lot, just because if we try to sell these.
Right, like in bulk.
It wouldn't be worth the staff time we pay for permitting.
Yeah, well, I just thought I'd ask. Councilman.
No, I was just gonna simply say that, the section 2 does reference the highest bid price too.
It's a bummer. All right. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 27 passes, 7 ayes, 0 noes. Ordinance 28, ordinance amending the 2019 general fund budget. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion? Motion, Councilmember Cummings, do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Parator, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 28 passes, 7 ayes, 0 noes. Ordinance 29, ordinance transferring funds within the 2019 water fund budget. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember December, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully, discussion? I think Chris's memo was pretty self-explanatory.
Oh, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 29 passes 7-0. Ordinance 30, ordinance authorizing and directing the reconveyance at 34 Centerview Drive. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Parator, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Garrett, discussion? Dan, anything you want to add other than what's, yeah, I know.
I believe that the memo that was submitted is fairly explanatory. It's pretty much a win-win for the city. Puts us in a better position than we would be if we had to go through bankruptcy court.
Yep.
And follow the procedures.
Perfect, thank you, Dan, and I would say that that would go for ordinance 31 also. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 30 passes 7-0. Ordinance 31, ordinance authorizing and directing the reconveyance of 2107 15th Street. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Parator. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Garrett. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 31 passes 7 ayes, 0 noes. Ordinance 32. Yes,
Sorry,
Councilmember.
just to go back on 31, there is this note on the side, I just want to clarify.
If you could speak into the mic, Dan, there's a note on the side on ordinance 31. If we could just go back, it did pass, but Councilmember Cummings has a question.
On page 3, I guess if there's two notes, one saying no, so maybe
Where are
it
you
discounts
looking?
the.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. You know, what we've got, what you have in here is the proposed stipulation order for. I did not put that notation in there. This was negotiated by outside counsel, and Jim Caruso did review this, so I really don't know what that notation is. Obviously, it'll be removed from the final legislation.
Yeah, or make a motion to modify. Does he want to add that possibly, Dan?
I don't know. I don't know who owns it. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, we've got 2 weeks to
Yeah,
figure out if we need to make them.
okay, it's moved to the regular meeting. Just, let us know, obviously, if that changes.
This isn't going to special, right?
No, the only one on the special is the sustainability. All right, so ordinance 31 passed, 7 ayes, 0 noes. Ordinance 32, ordinance amending City Code Chapter 39, Environmental Conservation Commission. Councilmember Kennedy, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Parator, do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Cummings, and I see that this is amending all throughout that particular code to take out city manager, put in city council. It's pretty straightforward. Did you want to add anything else, Councilmember?
Council President?
Yes, Councilmember Cummings.
I'll just note that I think this is a timely motion. Obviously, when you read back into the code, you can see that there are some pretty good ideas back in the day. And I think this group, it looks well structured to deal with some land use and other long-term planning issues around parks and trails and other things like that. And I think it's also important to do sort of in concert with the Sustainability Task Force, really to clarify the difference between work and make sure that we're both advancing work to protect our environment and our natural resources, and doing work to deal with climate change directly, and not necessarily have those get too conflated, and make sure there's space for both of those things to be done.
Well, it's timely, obviously, also, the zoning update is happening. It's going to be a year-long process. Obviously, this Environmental Conservation Commission, and as development continues along the waterfront, as it continues in sensitive areas, it's obviously very important to look, as you said, balancing our natural cultural resources with economic development, and certainly this commission can help foster that, so. All right. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance 32 passes, 7 ayes, 0 noes. Ordinance 33, ordinance amending the 2016 general fund in order to appropriate additional funds that will be received from the Capital Resource Corporation. Council President Mantello, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilmember Kennedy, do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Parator. Discussion. I just want to thank Councilmember Kennedy and the subcommittee for really driving this home with the CRC in terms of trying to get more money for a neighborhood improvement program. I want to thank the CRC for an additional $10,000. While we are on it, may I ask the clerk, I don't know if you've logged them in, but how many applications have we received and for how much money?
Over 20 applications and just over $20,000, but I can tell you that some of those requests are not within that.
Not responsible.
Okay,
The requests for
Yeah.
services and things like that, they're
under,
specifically
yeah.
outside the parameters.
gotcha,
So I think the request will be a little bit less.
a little bit less, that's awesome, I mean, yes, council member.
So if there's a certain amount of projects that might be non-responsive, there may be an opportunity for a second round of
Yeah, I think
funding.
we'll probably end up doing what we did last year, which was to have a second round.
That'd
It's
be
hard, I
great.
just
That
got
would
the
be-
application.
I understand, I didn't want to put you on the
Almost
spot, but,
everybody emailed them,
Yeah.
so we didn't have a chance to look at any of them
Right.
at a time. And so we're just slogging our way through right now. And we're gonna have to reach out to a lot of people to clarify a few things. But I would suspect that the total amount that would be awarded would be less than 20, and then you could put out
Another round.
So talking about the neighborhood improvement program.
yes. The neighbor, you can, so the neighborhood improve, I got you. Mara, if you could
Sorry
repeat,
about
that'd be great.
I said, we just got the applications in, the deadline was 4:30 on Monday, so most people emailed them. I am only just now going through them. We received over 20 applications, totaling over $20,000 in requests. However, I can tell just from a quick look at them that some of them include expenses that would not be allowed under the program, so requests for services and things like that were specifically disallowed. So I suspect that what will happen is that once we kind of contact people and ask them to revise their budgets, we'll end up with a total request that would be less than 20,000, and then we could go out with another, second round the way we did last year. So that's kind of what I'm anticipating, but we'll know more.
Yep.
We're hoping to get through the administrative review tomorrow. If don't call the city clerk's office tomorrow. Otherwise early next week, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, and you didn't disappoint us once again. You had a rough number of how many applicants and the amount that was applied for. And, once again, the CRC, we really appreciate Mayor. I know that this is not under your direct supervision, but we do know that, you obviously assisted this effort. So we want to thank you. We want to thank the CRC for the additional 10 grand and
The clerk's office.
the clerk's office. Thank you very much, Mara. Thank you. All right.
Council President?
Yes, Councilman.
Mara, do we have a sense of what the timeline would look like for that second round, just based on what last year's was? Was it a few months after?
That'll be up to you.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
I think we'll talk about it. Let's first see how many are knocked out, how much we have left, and then we can talk together as a group if that works.
Great.
Cool. Thank you again. Ordinance 33, we have a motion. Oh, yes.
I would just add, so people who didn't get in by 4:30 on Monday, if you had a project, there's a good chance we're gonna have a second round, so start working on it now.
Absolutely.
Good salesperson.
You'll be able to submit, okay? So
That's
Can I
good.
ask a question?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You gotta answer. Council
All right.
President.
Yes, Councilmember
Can we
Garrett.
make sure the people that may get knocked out, give them the proper instructions on how to resubmit it? Because I'm quite sure people that's gonna be knocked out probably didn't understand the protocol of the grant.
Yes, and what we should do, if someone was knocked out, let's just say on technicality, or maybe they applied for services and they really wanted to apply for capital project, let's try to contact them individually.
Yeah, so the administrative review portion of it, what I do is write to people and let them know that certain items on the budget are not allowed and give them the opportunity to resubmit a budget. So for the same project, but if they want to resubmit an amended budget, I'll take that and then I'll give that to the subcommittee. So we don't just knock
Yeah.
people out altogether.
Okay.
I mean, I don't. I give them the chance to resubmit a budget, and then at a later date, if it turns out that the subcommittee decides that the project's not fundable at all, we might give them a reduced award, or if they decide that it's not fundable at all, certainly we would be in touch with them to let them know why the project wasn't allowed and see if we can work on something.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen any project that I would say in total would not be acceptable. It's
It's
just a
just-
matter of the particular items that they're asking for may not be allowed, and we can work with them on that and revising the budget.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole goal is to get the money out the door, so however we can help facilitate that, we hope to do. Cool, awesome, all right. Any further questions, discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Ordinance 33? Aye, thank you. 7-0, ordinance 33 passes. 7-0. Ordinance 34, ordinance amending Troy City Code, Chapter 83, Article 1, surplus city property. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Parator, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Cummings, discussion. I do know a number of things were renumbered. Dan, do you mind popping up and kind of go through
Sure.
some of the pertinent things?
The highlights, as you indicated, well, there was renumbering. There is a memo with certain bullet points that the highlights.
Yeah, it's a little generic
All
though.
right, fine, then let's go through it. 83-1, what we did was we moved the definition of the property review committee. It's not being proper in that section of the purpose, and then we then moved it to section 83-3. That
Yep.
entire paragraph moved from 83-1 to 83-3 and is designated as A. All the other subdivisions of that section were then renumbered.
Yep.
The following letter. 83-2. Let's see, what we did was we provided additional remedies for code enforcement under this section,
Mhm.
management of surplus property, allowing the city to follow eviction procedures that are available in the real property proceedings law, which is pretty much what we do right now. Anyways, the last resort, and this codifies it. And also it allows code to go and inspect those properties earlier on. 83-3, as I indicated, we moved that paragraph, we renumbered the paragraphs. 83-3, new paragraph F, we added 3 new paragraphs to that, 5, 6, and 7, which allow the property review committee to designate certain.
Whoa, sorry. 83-3B, 83-3B,
No, 83-3.
the new
F.
B, I'm
No.
saying, but
Oh,
you skipped
okay,
it.
Yep.
I want to go back, sorry.
Appraisal.
We took out and appraise. Did we move that somewhere? I looked for it, I could not
No, we did
find it.
not. Right now, I believe the thinking of the committee was that we would rely upon the assessed value at that time. There is a provision that we did include that allows the assessor to make a judgment call as to properties that would have a market value of $40,000 or more. That is section.
That's an F. F3.
Yeah, it's in F3, minimum bid.
So rather than doing a full appraisal of every property, it allows for a judgment call by the assessor to just highlight the ones that are worth a little more and worth marketing or doing other highlighting in other ways. Whereas the rest of them, wasn't necessarily worth paying for a full assessment on all of them, and I don't think that's really been done in the past.
No, I just don't, I'm not sure how I feel about it yet, Dan. I looked for it to see if it was plugged in, and I was curious if in response to that, the 40K was the response in excess of the 40K rather than the 75.
Right. What would be the cost of an appraisal on,
Yeah.
on a standard?
Depends on the property. Vacant land appraisals go for $300, $400, $500. The appraisal of the house probably goes anywhere from $500 to $750. Commercial property, you're starting to talk, could be anywhere from, I'd say, lowball $500 to $3,000 or so.
See, I think we have to distinguish though, maybe. So for the 40K and up, we will get an appraisal, correct? Or am I reading that wrong?
No,
So the assessor is going to make the judgment call?
it says the assessor or his or her designee. So what the assessor can do is you can retain an appraiser to appraise the property if there's a concern or an issue regarding valuation.
Just, when you're talking appraisals, I'm going to support moving this, but I just don't know if I want to take out the appraising each parcel at fair market value.
I don't believe we do that right now. so-
That's what I was going to ask. What is happening now? I mean, it's in the law. Okay.
Wait, stay here.
So yeah, are we
So
not?
we do not do appraisals, so keep in mind that when we send these out for proposals, you know, if we're gonna start doing appraisals, we're gonna have to attach a minimum price to be able to cover our costs. How many, we put like 100 parcels out for sale at every foreclosure. If we had to turn around and pay $1,000 for every one of those to be appraised, and then also keep in mind, if we have an appraisal, the assessed value is also another component of that. We don't change the assessed value on these parcels
Correct.
at this point in time. So there's a couple ripples there that could go the opposite way of what I think you're thinking about. So what we're doing is we're saying we actually lowered what we say is a good property. So say, you know, 5 Grace Court was one of the recent ones that was a decent property.
Right.
So 5 Grace Court, if Sharon felt that that was a property that could garner a higher dollar amount, that would be one that we would say, okay, property committee, what do we want to set as a minimum bid for this property? Do we think we can get 10? Can we get 20? Can we get $30,000 for that? And that's what this next clause that we were talking about,
Right.
40,000.
The 40K.
That's what allows us to be able to do that. As well as later on, we also added in the ability to bring a real estate agent in and actually do those sales for us, which will also get us a better fair price as well too. But if we start doing appraisals for every property, we're going to have to pay for that, and then we have to be able to recoup that cost.
Right, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to that, but it was in there prior. That's why I got, it was not being done. That's the point. Like, I saw it in there. It was in there for a reason. It hasn't been being done, so striking it out may make sense. But I just.
So that's part of this as well too, even though we did really good work in 2016 with Councilmember Graff to update some of this, there was a lot of other things that did not get revised or reviewed through the committee and or through Sharon, the city assessor. So we cleaned up a lot of that stuff that the shalls and the, you know, all of that kind of language on stuff that we don't necessarily do now. We don't want to get hung up on things that are in the code that aren't being completed.
And, you know, there is language that I do really like. And any city employee, I think that that's much clearer rather than targeting certain offices. I'm very pleased with that. Also, the excluded employee section, that's really good. So, no, I really like a lot of this. Honestly, the only thing that really kind of jumped out at me were the appraisals and why was it in there? Why were we not? And okay, it makes sense. All right. Okay.
And just to kind of just go back to that on page 4, under the minimum bid, the extra, the 5, 6, and 7s that we added.
Yeah.
This is the ability to work with our partners.
Yep.
The Land Bank, Local Development Corporation on commercial properties or maybe larger parcels that can garner development, and then also the retention of the broker.
Good. Is there something we need to fix? I saw the mayor come up.
The mayor, who also has a law degree.
I heard.
Pointed out that section 83.2, subsection C, 1A, you referenced the eviction process under the real property. It should be real property actions and proceedings law. So the word actions was omitted in that.
E32, subsection C.
One.
Yep, 1.
Amend to add the word actions.
Actions.
Yep, very good. We have a motion. I will second that.
Can you repeat what the?
Yeah. Go to page 2, Maura, and go to under.
C1A,
Correct.
and then where am I putting actions?
New York real property, and then should be capital ACTIONS, the word actions,
Okay.
then lowercase e and then the rest of the paragraph.
Real property actions and proceedings. Okay. We have a motion. I seconded on the amendment. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Further discussion, Monica, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I know that the next ordinance has a change to this code as well. Do we
Yes.
just want to incorporate that change into this legislation?
since we're already doing it?
We can try if there's support.
And while you're discussing it,
Yeah.
it's the same ordinance,
Yeah.
and it's the same code, so you might as well try to incorporate all of it now.
We can,
And to be honest, when we met as a committee, Mr. Deli will
Yep.
second this, I asked, because I know that you had said
I've
stuff
been
in
trying,
your
yeah.
in your March presentation, you had said something about changing the code.
Mhm.
We brought it to the attention, it was brought up that there might be some, some thought process, and we
Right.
didn't see that, so we just want to make sure.
Okay.
So I just thought about now.
Okay, discussion on the present before we tackle ordinance 34. Is there anything else that you want to bring to our attention, Dan?
Yeah, as you indicated, the other big changes were the inclusion, the
Employees.
provision regarding sales to city employees in 83-4. Other than that, I think that most of them were, there were added sections regarding code compliance in 83-5 as far as our terms of sale. The committee that met, Dave Sharon was there to provide his input. Among the provisions that will be looked at, factors for sale, the history of code compliance will be considered. Other than that, I believe that those are the major changes.
Hey, Dan, I'm sorry, can you hit the CO, the certificate of occupancy language, which is on the bottom of page 7, it's G, under, 835. Yeah, page 7. Yep, right at the bottom. Did you want to address it? The owner shall obtain a CO, basically, certificate of compliance prior to the occupancy of the structure.
So what we found is when we go through the list of existing properties that we've already sold, what we've gone through and done is had code go and inspect, see if they were occupied, because we're getting ready to kind of make that list and send letters out and say, hey, it's been past your 6 months, you need to get an extension, what are you doing? What we found is we also have buildings that were occupied, but what we're saying now is that if the property was vacant for 3 years, we want to make sure that there's some sort of a CO to make sure that they're up to date, they're up to code, and so that they have an issue with CO, then we can say, all right, this is closed, this property's been done, we can move on, right? And then generally, and we won't release a reverter without the CO issue.
And this actually somewhat strengthens the reverter in that it makes sure that the property can't even be occupied until they come back to us. And at that point, I would expect the CO or the reverter would also be released.
So say if we had a really good property and then we said that, they wanted to occupy it, we're saying within 10 days of occupancy, you have to get a CO. So we know that it's occupied, we know that
So if
there's.
it's already occupied, you have to get a CO right away. If it's not already occupied, then you have to get a CO before it is occupied.
Okay.
Because we have a lot of properties right out there now that are occupied that don't necessarily have a CO, and now we're going knocking on their doors 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years later saying you need to get a CO.
So this adds a process for that. I think it does a good
And it's
job
not
of strengthening
addressed.
the reverter.
It's not actually addressed in the current code.
Oh, yeah, I see that, yeah. It's under the terms of sale portion. Okay. Okay. Any other,
Council President?
yes?
Yeah,
Councilman.
Monica, I just want to make sure I understand this, the piece about requiring the minimum bids for the 40,000 market value. So the assessor makes the determination if they think they can get a bid outside of our typical foreclosure process, they'll put that out to auction, but otherwise the property committee will continue as we typically do with the properties that aren't market value assessed over that dollar value.
Yeah, so the assessor will know if it's a property that's considered probably $40,000 or more. And then that assessor will take it back to the property review committee and then we'll establish the minimum bid for it.
And that'll go out to bid through an auction
Right.
process.
Well, like we normally do. So
Right.
the proposal will have minimum bid starting at, X amount of dollars.
Okay.
Through the proposal amount that we do now.
So I guess under the section of the reentry, which basically is a reverter, We're gonna take out the calendar of reentry. I know, there was a lot of talk when we amended, the legislation, Monica, back in 2016, just to kind of have this calendar. And I don't think it's been abided by,
That
but
actually
is it
was done
something
before.
that
was
code?
prior. That was
Okay.
actually prior.
Okay.
Nothing was changed in the 2016
Okay.
ordinance. So this was something that we do internally.
Right.
I've had Chris Brown when he was doing vacant properties and doing this process a lot. Now Eric Ferraro and Dave and Jim are actually going through, working with Sharon to actually go year by year on sales. And this is how we're actually going through and cleaning up and saying COs and permits and all that other kind of stuff. So that we can kind of garner that. Now keep in mind that prior to 2016, when we made the current code changes that are, some of them are changed in this current code, there was a different release at that point in time. It was worded differently. So we have to make sure that we abide by whatever's written in the deed.
Okay, I guess I just want to make sure that the language at the end, where the conditions have not been fulfilled, the Corporation Council shall take whatever action is necessary
Sure.
to re-enter or reacquire the property for the city of Troy.
Correct.
I kind of, do we lose a little stature taking that out?
It's in the deed.
Okay.
It's actually in the deed itself.
I mean, I just don't want to lessen our authority, and I don't want to take out something that I think could be used, you know. Yeah.
That language was re-added, as far as the Corporation Council.
Oh, here it is. You
There
added
it is.
it at the end.
83
Very good. I got it.
End of,
Yep.
section C.
That's very good. Okay. All right. You just bumped it up. All right. All right. That's much, much better. And in terms of the purchaser pay all delinquent taxes, we're taking that out.
Correct. So when we go through the foreclosure property,
Yeah.
our process, those back taxes are extinguished. And then they pay their prorated from the time of the proposal sales to current whenever they purchase.
Okay.
Hey, Council President,
Yes,
in other words, does that
Councilmember.
mean that the purchaser won't have to pay those back taxes that exist on
Correct.
Property.
So from the time that the previous stuff until the city took ownership of it,
Yep.
that is all extinguished.
Great.
The foreclosure process as well as any fees or anything.
Excellent, thank you.
And I noticed later, and this just must have been language too generic, the additional information. In addition to the items required in the proposal, the proposer will also provide the following information in connection with the additional, and that was put in 2016.
What page is it?
It's, sorry, 13.
Page 13.
You'll see it's a D, and it was taken out. It's regarding the signed commitment.
All that is that's just all those 4 items that were enumerated under D.
Mhm.
We're including those 4 items under C. So it's really just a matter of wordsmithing. That
The additional.
moved the extraneous paragraph D,
Mhm.
just include those 4 factors under C.
So all 8 of those are required.
Got it. Yep.
Council
Okay.
President,
Yep,
And some of those
Councilmember.
cleanup.
Yeah,
just on that technical piece, it looks like then, would that mean that if that's all under C, then the E language would actually be D, and then
Yes.
F would be
Yes.
E? Okay.
That's good that you incorporated where the conditions,
And
okay?
then you'll see under D, the new D,
Yes,
we added consideration of the applicant's history and full compliance.
yes,
That's something that we take into consideration now through our committee. We just wanted to formalize that.
okay. All right.
We also
Um,
changed the options. It says shall, and we say may.
I did see that, yep, okay, makes sense. All right,
We just don't want to bind future cities or future governments
Right.
to something that might not be what they want to do.
and now for council members, what Monica suggested, I mean, while we are rolling here and continuing discussion, what I thought, and, you know, hopefully the mayor would agree, it's an additional accountability measure. Basically, you'll see my proposal in ordinance 34, and if you go up to the re-entry, or I'm sorry, 35, I apologize. If you go up to the re-entry portion, which is E35-C, bear with me. This is not moving. Okay, so right now, termination of right of reentry, it basically reads any condition or right of reentry may be terminated by the deed signed by the mayor upon either a certificate of compliance from the Bureau of Code Enforcement showing that the property conforms in all respects to the appropriate rules, etc., and what the purchaser basically said he or she was going to do. And what I'm suggesting, just based not only on the situation that we saw in Cemetery Road, but some other situations whereby the mayor signs the reentry, that the city council, I would like to insert, as you will see in ordinance 35, I would like to insert the city council, and then the mayor would sign the reverter. So basically putting in city council prior to the mayor signing the reverter. And basically all I'm asking, number one, it'll be discussed publicly. As we know right now, the mayor can sign it. There's no public discussion. There's no council interaction. Honestly, if I was the mayor, I wouldn't mind an additional set of eyes. I wouldn't mind the transparency and the public discussion on a reverter or a reentry. It would go through committee, then come to the council. Council authorizes the mayor to sign. So essentially, we would not be signing. We essentially would just authorize the mayor to sign that reentry. So it's pretty straightforward. My memo in support outlines, why. And as I mentioned, it's not just the Cemetery Road issue. It's a matter, and this has been something that really has been kind of eating at my craw for a while. When Councilmember McGrath was here and we went over the legislation, we actually talked about that, but we excluded having the council at that time. We just thought that it was too much with all of the amendments, and we said, let's see how it works. If you read presently, the law committee in conjunction with the corporation council can discuss the right of reentry, but there was no official authorization from the council to authorize the mayor to sign that reentry. So basically, I'm adding in city council. So you will see that in ordinance 35. While we're discussing this, I just want to incorporate it in the discussion because, as Monica states, it makes sense. We're talking about real property. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but yeah.
I just have a tech, when we're looking at that within the ordinance we're talking about, which page would that be incorporated?
That's page 7, and you'll see on C. So basically, it's 83-5C, and what it would read now, Councilmember December, is if you turn to ordinance 35, ordinance 35 is right after may be terminated upon city council authorization for the mayor to sign. So we're inserting city council in ordinance 35.
Council President?
Yeah.
Just kind of want to understand you mentioned there were a few other cases. I'm not aware of those, but if you could let me know. And then sort of what has changed since you did the first review here. Because I think I've had some discussions around the process here. And it does sound like this would add some significant red tape and hurdles for people. But I wanted to sort of understand why it's newly feels necessary.
No, it's certainly not new. And if you look back at the minutes and the notes, this was talked about quite extensively. I have made that request in the past during the Cemetery Road issue. And if you go back to the notes when we actually talked about totally revamping the real property legislation, we talked about this issue. At the time, it was something the council felt, you know what, we wouldn't mind to be an additional set of eyes and ears, and right now it is not done publicly. In terms of the red tape, quite frankly, I would think a reverter is something very important. I think we've seen it in the Cemetery Road. The purchaser, obviously, under the new legislation, wouldn't even be able to purchase the property. But more importantly, that purchaser promised to do things on that property. The mayor, you know, on the basis of code enforcement, et cetera, signed a reverter. Now it would be public. The council would actually be seeing this, but we'd be able to talk about it publicly in terms of when that reverter came forward. Monica, you're welcome to add, but.
No, but I just want to make sure that we keep in mind that there is a previous release of reverter that reads very differently than what was changed in 2016. So please be careful of what you're stating.
Yeah.
Correct, I'm sorry, yes,
Please,
correct,
please be
yeah.
careful.
No, I agree, I
Because
agree.
he said it
There
was going to be
was-
cleaned up
correct,
as a vacant
yeah.
lot.
This
Not
is
building.
new, that's correct. So this is new legislation, so what I'm doing is adding upon the new legislation.
Council
And that is a good point. So 2016, we overhauled the legislation to try, just to put some safeguards in, to try to make it, let's just say, a little more foolproof. What I think additionally needs to be done, and I had stated this back in 2016, it was just too much at one time. Saying that I believe after 6 months, if a purchaser does want to make that extension, you know, we are selling the property. We are authorizing the sale. After the sale, it's done. We essentially are hands-free. If I was mayor, I wouldn't mind that additional safeguard, those additional eyes where the legislative body is actually looking at a proposal in terms of a reverter. So in my eyes, this is an additional precaution, additional accountability, and just one that I feel could help in terms of trying to even make this legislation more foolproof.
Council President?
Yes.
Well, for one, you're not mayor. But
No.
on that point, can we call upon the mayor to speak in his perspective of the existing process?
Council President.
And quite frankly, I really don't think that comment was called for. It's an additional measure. And
Okay, you
if
said if you
really,
were the mayor.
I would
Alright.
want that additional
Council
measure.
President.
Yes.
Let's not get petty.
I would be
Councilmember
particularly
Kennedy, ask the mayor to come up. Mayor, please.
I think there are two unintended consequences that I'd like to point out to you. We do 3, 4, 5 releases a month, and they're often on very short notice. So we're going to be calling on you for special meetings fairly regularly to keep these transactions moving. More importantly, however,
May I ask,
perspective-
3, 4, 5 reverters a month?
yes,
But they're not all through foreclosures.
This is particularly correct.
Right.
Right.
so.
So, wipe that
The
out.
point is, no, don't wipe that
Well-
out. We will be calling on you for special
Okay.
meetings regularly.
Okay.
And Council President, for once, can you give somebody the floor without interrupting?
Secondly, and probably more importantly,
Yes.
a prospective buyer who is buying a piece of property for someone who has a reverter on their property right now can evaluate whether they can purchase that property and have that reverter released. They evaluate it by looking at the deed language, and the deed language says something to the effect of, if there's a CO in place, the reverter will be released. They can count on that being the case. If you add a condition whereby the council has to approve the release of the reverter, then there's a wild card in the transaction. If I were representing a buyer, I would recommend that they not buy a piece of property from somebody who has a reverter still attached to the property. It's subject to the whim of the council. We do not know how the council may feel that day, whether they like or dislike the person and may vote accordingly, hopefully not. But that possibility exists, and a prospective buyer is spending a lot of money getting to the point of closing, paying attorneys, inspection fees, title insurance, so they've got a lot of money on the line. They don't want an uncertainty whereby someone on a whim could say, no, we're not going to release the reverter and tank the whole deal. So I just want you to think about those things. I think it impacts the saleability of properties that have reverters.
So, yeah, so, very quickly, I guess what I would request, if you could, send us the reverters over the past 3 months, to date of what you've signed, I think that would be helpful. So, I'd love to see that list. And on the second part, so are you stating, Mayor, that, when the city sells property, that they're committing to doing what they said that they were going to do on that property, whether it be a building or whether it be turning a blighted building into a two-family or making a two-family into a single-family. So essentially, you're saying that it would be, we are scaring people off in buying that property if they didn't comply with what they originally said they were going to comply with. I mean, I don't think that's second.
What I am saying is that you're creating an element of uncertainty. So if I purchase a piece of property from the city.
Correct.
And there's a reverter clause on it, and it requires me to bring the property up to code to have the reverter released. I know what needs to be done to have that reverter released. The person who may be lining up to buy it from me knows what has to happen to have that reverter released. If we then impose a condition that says, well, you have to bring it up to code and the council will then decide, you're injecting an element of uncertainty in a process where a lot of people have a lot of money on the line. So it makes that piece of property less marketable.
And I would tend to say, I totally disagree, because when that buyer is putting their name in buying that property, they're committing that they're going to do what they said they were going to do. Secondly, more importantly, we're authorizing you to sign that reverter. So when you talk about like an additional bureaucratic red tape, what would happen is that person say, Joe Smith, okay, well, in 6 months, you didn't do what you said you were going to do, or say they got a 6-month extension. So, say in a year, nothing happened on that property. It's still a blighted building. They haven't done anything. Quite frankly, right now, the law is saying, okay, the mayor can single-handedly sign that reverter, bam, bam, boom. But this would be additional measures when doing
I'm
it.
thinking you're not understanding what I'm saying.
Okay.
This is based on having been in the practice of law and having facilitated hundreds of real estate transactions. Let's take a situation where the conditions are met.
Okay.
The property is brought up to code. As it stands right now, I know that I'm legally entitled to a release because it's been brought up to code. The person who's going to buy it from me, I'm flipping it and saying, the person who's going to buy it from me, their attorney can evaluate and say, yes, Patrick Madden brought that up to code. He's entitled to a release of the reverter clause. Now, with the additional condition that the council must approve that, we've injected an element of uncertainty. I could have brought it up to code, and the council could be in a bad mood and say, yeah, we don't want to release any reverters this month. It's something that people have to take into consideration. As an attorney representing that second buyer, I would caution them about purchasing that property. So I do think it impacts the value of the property on a resale. And then would reduce the number of people who might be making a bid on our property with the thought of rehabbing it and selling it to a home.
Right, more of a flip. Okay, all right. I was thinking straight out sale. So you're saying a resale, flipping the house, etc. Okay, I'll consider that. Yep. Council member and then council member.
Two questions. One, is your sense that many of the reverters that you see are brought to you at the point of a expected transaction?
They are, and I wish they weren't. You know, I wish people would respect the amount of work we have to do in our office and give us a fair amount of time to get these things done. But unfortunately, the world doesn't work that way, especially in real estate transactions. It's often the very last expenditure that is done in the chain of transactions is securing title insurance. And at that time, the existence of the reverter surfaces, and we're, 4 days away from closing, 5 days away from closing. So we're rushing Dave Sheeran out there to do an inspection, and then he signs off, and then it goes to corporate counsel's office, and they rush through the reverter release in an effort to try to meet the needs of the parties in the transaction. So yes, unfortunately, it often comes out last minute. I wish it didn't, but it does.
And Council President?
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to say is sort of from a philosophical standpoint, my sense is that this is sort of what the administration is for, right, and what the legislative branch is for. In our amendments here, we have, over the last few years, I think constrained and dictated the terms under which the administration is allowed to administer this law. And to say that we as the legislative branch should be inserted into the process of administration, I think seems a little out of order to me, just in terms of, again, there's no decision to be made as to whether or not a reverter can be released. It's either abiding by the law we set forth or it's not. And if it's not, then it can't be released. That's what the administration is set forth to administer. And so to have 3, 4, 5 pro forma pieces of legislation where we don't really have a choice, and if we did execute a choice, then it would be sort of in opposition to the law we had previously set forth. I'm a little concerned about sort of what precedent that sets and sort of what it means in terms of the separation of powers.
And, and that's very fair. You will see it. It's a question. Yeah, but he's asking a question.
It was a statement.
Well, I thought you were asking. Council member, you're completely out of order. And Council member Cummings did ask a question. And just my answer to that would be, in terms of overstepping authority, et cetera, there is separation of powers. But it is our job to be the watchdog on the administration. Putting in an additional set of eyes for transparency, for public disclosure, does not hurt. And so I believe in terms of the legislative body, it is our job to continue to be those second set of eyes, to continue to shed a light upon things that maybe are just being done single-handedly. So we honestly, in terms of legislation, it is our job to legislate, to be a watchdog. So
to be clear,
answer
legislating and watchdog, I think, are two different things. And I agree there is a role of a watchdog, but I don't think it is
fine. Councilmember Kennedy.
Thank you. This is a question for the mayor. Is it, in your experience, possible to obtain title insurance with either a reverter clause applied or without, potentially in addition to this proposed measure with approval by a legislative body approving the...
You can often get title insurance with exceptions, but on a mortgagee policy as opposed to a fee policy, no bank is going to accept that exception. So if you're financing the purchase of the property, you're not going to be able to get title insurance with a reverter, outstanding reverter.
And then, Council President?
Yes.
What were, just going back, what were the other examples that you had aside from the Cemetery Road?
Yeah, one that really has been brought to my attention actually by a couple of council member December's constituents is Vanellavine, in terms of just progress on that project. And I think we all want to see it progress, but we're now, I think, entering into our 3rd year with that project. So, that's one that, certainly comes to light. And like I said, we all want to see that be a success. But that's certainly one that we as the council, I didn't even know it was extended. David Graham, I believe, wrote a 3-page letter, a constituent of Councilmember December's, that he's very upset, and a number of constituents down there. So that would be a particular one. Potentially, obviously, Ordinance 35 looks like it is not going to move forward, but even before we vote on it, I would strongly encourage the council, to put in at least some type of reporting to the council, what reverters have been signed off. Vanilla Bean is a perfect example. How many Vanilla Beans are out there right now of foreclosed city property that we have no clue that were sold 3, 4, 5 years ago, have gone nowhere? I'd like to see a checklist. And, I really thought Ordinance 35 would essentially kind of put in a little more transparency, a lot more transparency, and just really opening up the process. And just one last thing in terms of something that Councilmember Cummings stated, dictate, this particular language that was put in is a combination, not just of council input. The language you're seeing today and the language from 2016 had a ton of input from the administration, from prior Corporation Counsel Glasheen, from a situation that certainly put a black cloud over the city's head, Cemetery Road sale. So in my eyes, this legislation is a result of some really good work by Monica, by Kevin Glasheen, by the former council member McGrath, and a number of people to address something that definitely we were not a part of, Mayor Madden wasn't a part of, but something that should never have happened. And all I'm looking to do is put additional eyes to ensure, and yes, you're gonna have some bad seeds out there. They're not going to abide by the law. But the more that we can put in place in this law, the better we're gonna be, and the better we're not gonna have the AG clamping down on us, looking at our sales. So in my eyes, it was just another safeguard to put in. Whether we want to loosen it up a little, I'm fine with that. If we want to amend it a little, I'm totally open to that. I am not tied to this particular strict language. But what I will say, we definitely need more reporting when it comes to the foreclosed properties that people are buying. We do not know where they go, if they're abided by, after we sell it.
Council President.
Councilmember Gully and then Councilmember Kennedy.
Council President, in the meeting that we had when we were going over the sale of foreclosed property, we talked pretty in-depthly about the stages and the certificate of compliance or a certificate of occupancy being in place. I think that the administration has an obligation through the departments to do the proper steps to get that to the mayor. And that should be done in compliance. I realize that, measuring twice and cutting once is always good, and having that oversight is very good. I'm just not sure if we do that, if we take away a lot of the responsibility to get that paperwork in line into the mayor properly before it gets to us.
That. No, we're not changing that process whatsoever. That process we're not touching. The only thing we're touching, code's still going to have to do.
Right.
The check on the property to ensure that the buyer is doing everything according to that checklist. This essentially puts in a step that the legislative body would authorize the mayor to sign that reentry.
That would put a lot of additional workload on the council and the administration.
Well, I honestly would like to see the list of reverters to date. I think
so would I.
would.
So I'd like to I'd like to get more information before indulging in deeper into this.
Totally open to that. But we are on Ordinance 34. If there's no further discussion, let's vote on that, and then we'll move to Ordinance 35. Does that work?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Council President, just on
34.
Ordinance 34, to that technical point I raised, I think we need to make an amendment to renumber the letters near the end.
If you could go to the page.
Yep, page 13. I believe. Yes, page 13, we are striking letter D, and it's becoming a part of subsection C. So the amendment would be to
Further,
yeah, so to change E to
further letter E to D, further letter F to E, and further letter G to F.
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay, Mara, you have that? Okay, fair enough. On the amendment to ordinance 34, we have a motion. I'll second that. All in favor on the amendment?
Aye.
Opposed, 7-0 on the amendment. On the amended ordinance, further discussion? Okay, on the amended ordinance, do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, Councilmember Garrett. Do we have a second? Second, discussion? All in favor on 34? Opposed? Okay. And then ordinance 35, ordinance amending the code of the city of Troy, section 835C. Council President Mantello, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. Discussion, we can pick up where we left off.
So I think, Council President?
Yes.
Council President, I'll go.
So I think right where we left off, it sounded like we were talking about getting some reports back from the administration.
That's fair.
I think that seems like a more appropriate level of oversight
As
for
the
a council.
sponsor, I will make a motion to withdraw this for more information. Mayor, if you could get us the reverters to date, that would be helpful. Maybe even if you want to do the last 12 months, that's fine. Is there any other information? Jim, you brought up something, Councilmember Belli, in terms of the reporting. Is there anything that I would like to see over the last 12 months, maybe the foreclosed sales, or maybe even the last 2 years, and where they are now, in terms of what's outstanding, what actually has been developed, et cetera, maybe, just to give us an idea, what's out there.
Sure,
What,
the deputy mayor's been working on that, I think it may be actually completed. So we have a list of what has sold and where those, where the compliance stands at this point in time. Putting together a list of reverters that have been issued, I can provide you that, as well as the letter from code authorizing the release. Understand that this is not a single party deciding whether the reverter
I
is
know.
released. It goes from code to the corporation counsel's office before it gets to me. So, there's a number of people that are looking at it. So we'll get to that list.
okay.
Great.
And you know what, if you would make a motion to table, I'll second, and then
I'll make a motion to table.
I'll second, in return for the reports, et cetera, and what has been done in terms of reverters.
Council President, I would just say I appreciate the intent here.
Yes,
And I think the process is the part that I think we had a lot of questions about. I know in my district, and you referenced one property, there are other properties, so I do appreciate the intent on the resolution.
Thank you.
Council President?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that all meeting is moving forward. They have timelines set for next year to finish. But are there other examples that, aside from those two?
I've heard of a couple, but
Like what?
we have a motion, we have
We're
a
past
second.
that. Come
Honestly,
on.
we're totally past that.
For the record, the Philippines has not had its reverter list.
Okay, thank you, thank
And
you.
so are there
And we
other-
don't know.
But are there
That's
other-
the whole thing. But that's the point, council member, we don't know.
So you don't
And
know.
so if we can get the list, it can tell us, okay, so-and-so has come up, I know that that property was sold. I'm not going to put that person under the bus, council member. I want to know, okay, is there a reverter? We don't know that as the council. And I will tell you, when I was deposed by the AG, the first thing they asked, the question, because I was the one that sent the letter, they said, well, what happens after the council sells it? Are you kept in the loop? Do you know what happens to that property? We don't. And I feel that that's not a checks and balances. So I'm just looking to somehow put something in, whether it's reporting measures, I'm all for that, okay?
So we're
So
withdrawing this
on,
for now, or-
no, we have a motion, we have a second on the table, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, so
No.
6 to 5-2. Or
That was the
do
motion,
you
was
want,
that to
it's
withdraw?
to table, to table.
To table.
Table.
Yeah, I'll vote to table.
Thank you. Can we do slow roll? Councilmember Gully, to
Table.
table.
Yes.
Councilmember Gary, Councilmember Perator, Councilmember Cummings, Councilmember Vicente,
Aye.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Yes.
Council President Mantella, yes. We go from a 5-2 to
All
a
right.
7-2. All right.
Turn the page as the song
We did
goes.
ordinance 36, ordinance 37. Oh boy, this is a really controversial one. I'm kidding. Ordinance authorizing and approving the filing of the City of Troy's application for funding pursuant to the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974, the McKinney Act Emergency Shelter Grant Program, and the Home Investment Partnership Program, and designate the mayor as the authorized, wait a minute, we're designating the mayor as the authorized representative of the city for such purposes. Council President Mantello, at the request of the administration, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Perator, do I have a second? Second, Councilmember Cummings. On the discussion on this, I would only ask, Monica, if we could get, Carolyn on the next round, and I know that that's in the future, the foreseeable future, because I do know, Councilmember Garrett, a number of people in your district are really, really interested in the next round. Somehow, if we can just really, really put that out there, I think we have neighborhood meetings on this, don't we?
Yeah, there's actually a requirement
Okay.
in order to do the 5-year plan to do public meetings throughout the city. So
Okay,
they'll
cool.
be visiting areas, asking for people's feedback and all of that.
Awesome.
When does
Thank you,
that process
thank
start?
Oh, you know what, I have to get back to you. I'll get back to you at the official meeting.
Okay, that would be helpful, because there are so many people chomping at the bit, I think probably in all of our districts. So we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, ordinance 37 carries 7-0. Resolution 28. Resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with GAR Associates LLC. Councilmember Cummings at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Perator, do I have a second?
Second.
You can't. Do I have a second?
Second.
A hesitant second, Councilmember December. Our finance meetings are a little looser. On the discussion, I do know that we have Gar with us, but before I even ask Gar to step up, I just have to tell you, as you know, normally will sponsor resolutions, ordinances. On this one, I really had concerns, and I think you saw my email. We paid Gar a lot of money back in 2012, right around there, for a citywide assessment. And you should know, prior to a lot of the newbies that came to the council, the prior council, specifically Councilmember Bodnar, the predecessor of Councilmember Perator, it was tough. We were getting flooded, and when I say flooded, with certiorieries like every month. And you know, we get some certiorieries, you just gotta bite the bullet. You just gotta go with it. And then others, you know, was, well, did GAR make the mistake? Because some of them, they're so far off. And so you'll see, did GAR make the mistake, or are we wrong saying that we'll agree to it? Somebody's got to be wrong here. So there were properties that were reassessed in 2013, and then like 2 years later, bam, we're being hit with these certiorieries a year later. Yeah. So saying that this is just something I really, really cannot agree to. I'm sorry, I just have not been happy with GAR's performance, and I know that you do this all throughout the state. I know you're in other municipalities. I just think our citywide assessment, I'm just not sure if it went quite right. And I think the city of Troy paid a lot of money for this, And I just don't know if I can authorize Gar coming back in. And I get where Sharon's coming from, and she's looking for a little help on the commercial properties. And I might be a little open to hearing that. But right now, I just can't, authorize Gar into another contract. And that's me. And like I said, a couple council members prior, they wanted, there really was an effort to potentially put a lawsuit in against Gar. That's how adamant some prior members on both sides. It was not anything political. So saying that, that's just my 2 cents.
Council President?
Yep.
And I don't know that we need to relitigate previous contracts, but I do just want to have a couple baseline questions, given the previous, or I guess we'll start with Dan Mitzlett. I know previously in discussion you had said that a vacant parcel reassessment would be a couple $100, and a larger building would be maybe $500 to $700. I think obviously this reassessment was done at about $50 a parcel, which obviously there's data involved, and there's you can sort of do it in bulk. But I wanted, from your experience with other communities, was there an abnormal scale of reassessments that were done? In particular, were they on residential parcels that maybe people weren't allowed in, or on the commercial ones?
I think we just need to clarify a few things, right? When I spoke earlier about the foreclosure process, those are basically called URAR, form appraisals for a certain purpose for the foreclosure, right? What the council has right now is a resolution for a contract for support services. That is primarily for, and Mr. Barnett is here, he can address these things, for basically processing commercial building permits, providing measurements, updated inventory. What I'm hearing is a lot of concerns about the reval and an update or whatever. This is not a reval, this is not an update. All this is providing the assessor, who basically is the assessor. She has a clerk who's full-time and a part-time assistant to assist her with updating her inventory, so we don't reach the point where we've got gaps in our inventory where there's a big disparity in commercial values and residential values. To answer your question directly, Mr. Cummings, I represent towns and cities throughout New York State. I've been involved in a lot of revals in this area. I've been in a lot of revals with GAR and without GAR. I can tell you that President Nantella mentioned the uptick in certs. That's not unusual, all right? I can tell you the city of Albany, when they did theirs exponentially, it was huge compared to what we experienced in Troy. I've been representing the city for the last 15 years in these matters, and I can tell you that there was an uptick at the reval, and that gradually leveled out. We're at a point right now where, we probably have, I think, 7 or 8 active tax rates, okay, which is pretty good for a city this size in terms of parcels. I guess specifically your questions are as far as, I guess I need a little bit of clarification. Is your question about the process of reval or about appraisal or mass appraisal? I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, I talked to some previous council members as well about this issue, and I think the primary concern people had was, we paid $1 million for a reval, right? But when you do the math out, that's about $50 a parcel. And so, I'm trying to understand. I don't fully understand what the gripe was.
Okay. What we're dealing with when you talk about a revaluation or an update, that's what's called a mass appraisal. Right. That is not going individually in each property. Preparing an appraisal report like we would for the foreclosure process that we discussed before, or like we would do for a tax or certiorari. In that case, the appraiser goes in, it's a very high level of detail. Mass appraisal does not require that. It requires basically a statistical analysis to maintain equity for all the parcels in the city. When we did the reval, there's a 40-year gap between 1973 and when we actually did the reval. So there were a lot of anomalies within neighborhoods on the same block, a lot of outliers that were addressed. So, and again, Mr. Barnett can address the concerns directly, but I think it's very important for the council, to recognize that this resolution is solely for a contract for support services. It is not for a revaluation. It is not for an update.
And Dan, I do get that.
Yeah.
The point is, I'm not going to buy a car from you if I'm not happy with the car I purchased prior, okay?
Yeah.
That's just me. Council member.
I suppose two questions. One, can you speak a little bit to what, I guess either of you, exactly what the scope of work that we're looking at here, and in particular, why it felt like this is needed at this time?
Dave, my name is Dave Bernard. I'm the Vice President of.
Oh, we can move that up for you.
No offense. I'm Vice President of GAR Associates, and I just want to speak to some of the concerns of the reassessment very briefly. It's important to understand that prior to the reassessment, you were at 14% of full market value. There was a ton of inequities. Quite frankly, it was a historical project, not only from a valuation standpoint, but from a data collection standpoint. There was a complete comprehensive data collection project that occurred for every single property. The project was also certified by the Office of Real Property Tax Services at 100%. So you brought, and there are inherent benefits of carrying your values at 100%, which you've done since 2013. I won't belabor that issue or list them. I think the proposal that's in front of you is, as Dan mentioned, a support services. It's prudent for any municipality, and we are currently contracted with multiple municipalities that are experiencing what the city of Troy is experiencing in terms of growth and development, which is good news for everybody that's involved and lives in the city and works in the city. What this proposal and this potential contracted services would provide is a collection and inventory and processing of the commercial permits themselves. And quite frankly, some of these properties are complex in nature, not only from a collection standpoint and an inventory standpoint, but also from a value standpoint. And while the crux of the agreement of the proposal is really on the inventory side, we will be making a recommendation to your assessor. The assessor ultimately will make the final determination on the value. But the bulk of the work and the work efforts are going to be assisting your assessment office, the assessor, with the collection and the processing. And because of the development, the assessment office is not closed. They have day-to-day operations that they still conduct. And so this is an additional work effort that we would be assisting with.
Any further questions, discussion? Council member.
So when you talk about permits and drawings, it's my understanding that we also, part of the deliverable is a sort of good up-to-date drawings of layouts of each building in our database. Is that?
That's accurate. So it would be a site visit, a photograph, we call them a building sketch, and updating the RPS system, which is the state-run database assessment system. All of that information would be updated, and also going forward, that updated information will be at the assessor's disposal.
Further questions, discussion?
I guess maybe from someone from the administration can just speak to why this was undertaken now. I know we talked a little bit about it. But.
Yeah, the reason it's being undertaken now is that, as David referenced, we are having significant development within the city. And as David referenced, since the 2013 revaluation, we've been fortunate to have a 100% equalization rate. As a result of the development and increasing property values in the city, our equalization rate, I believe we have less than 100% this year, right? So if that trend continues, there's definitely going to be a need to address that in the future so that we don't have any of the inequities, whatever, that occurred over the last 40 years since the last reval. So as David also referenced, the assessor's office is a full-time operation. Sharon at this time of year, March 1st is an exemption application deadline. She had a tsunami of those. In addition, she has to perform all the inventory and get her tentative roll filed by May 1st with the county. So in addition to that, as David referenced, we have the continued increasing development, which requires her to basically process a lot of the things that GAR would do, which is updated building sketches and data and measurements and stuff like that. So that would be, at this time, with the property development going on in this city, this is an opportune time to have this done.
And, you know, Dan, now, on that note, we've always done this in-house. I mean, you, clearly, a year's development hasn't, you know, I'm just saying, we've done it in-house each year. And you're saying over the last year, there's so much development that we need an outside firm to come in.
The equalization rate, I'm not sure what the tentative rate is, but I know it's at least a 5% decrease, right? So that is significant that if the state comes in and certifies a rate that's less than that, that affects a lot of the city. But yeah, I mean, there is, I know that Sharon has got an increasing amount of just ministerial stuff in terms of building permits, measurements, sketches, whatever that she can't attend to. You know, she is stuck at that counter processing a lot of the day-to-day stuff that needs to be done for that office, and she does not have the time to go out into the field and perform inspections like she's required to, or process the permits in the manner that she would like.
Wouldn't code enforcement also be a part of that? And then number two, we did give Sharon another person this year in the office that she didn't have.
Yeah, they're doing what they can, but it's very difficult for them to keep up with the amount of work that's going through right now.
Council President.
What about code?
The code assists, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, they're out there doing.
Yeah,
They got tons of free time.
No, I never said it. Councilmember December.
So I guess this is directed to GAR. Did I understand correctly that this process you'll be specifically looking at businesses, not residential? Did I understand that correctly?
Commercial permits.
Commercial permits, okay. And so, you know, and I think this is to either of you. So am I understanding this correctly, that the services that you're doing are looking to support the assessor's office because of the development? Am I understanding this correctly, that we don't want to lose any assessments, if there's development happening, we want to make sure that they're assessed accurately? Is that a fair?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. It's prudent for any municipality to, number one, keep up the inventory and capture the correct inventory, which ultimately will lead to an appropriate and equitable value.
Which will ultimately be determined by the assessor's office, correct?
That's accurate.
Okay. And do we have a hard, I know I see the payout schedule based in dollars. Was there a dollar figure that we budgeted? Was
That's
it
17,000?
17,000? Okay.
Grand, yeah. There's 17 grand, I guess. On that note, maybe Andy, I think you're still here. The RFP went out. Andy, I know that GAR was the only one that responded. If we were to put out another RFP, you know, just to get some other interest out there, I mean, obviously that'd be doable also, correct?
I don't see why not, but I don't know if anyone else would respond, because GAR was the only one who responded the first time.
Right.
Yep.
I understand.
Council President?
I guess, yeah, go ahead, council member. I have a quick question after the council member. Go
Just
ahead.
one more clarification. Is your sense that this work will be both permits going forward as well as some backlog, and is this the kind of thing that we should expect sort of annually, or is this catching us up and?
Yeah, to address both concerns, one, you know, GAR would be handling backlog data as well as permits that are being filed right now. And I'm sorry, Councilman, what was the second?
Just whether or not this
Must be an annual
it'll be
procedure.
sort of expected as an annual thing we should be looking at budget for. Or,
Well, I mean, how can we predict?
Right.
Yeah, and if other similar municipalities in the capital district do retain us on a yearly basis for
And there's-
various services.
and you're paid per permit, so it's not like.
Essentially, there might be a bulk amount, and then, you know, as the work effort may increase or decrease, that budgeted dollar amount may change.
You included a residential field appraiser and your hourly rates, obviously, we wouldn't be using that person, you're only doing commercial, correct? So out of the consulting, who would be the primary folks working with the city? Or would you use the residential for the residential units? How does it work? Like,
Yeah, the billable rates are for options in the event that there would be additional services that would be needed. Primarily, it's gonna be a commercial permit, a commercial appraiser, and/or RPS specialist that will be handling the majority of the work. Our intention is not to do any residential, but if for some reason there is a need, the assessment need, the assessment office needs that, it would be something that we built into the proposal in the event that you did.
anyone else have any questions, discussion?
Council President.
Councilmember Gully.
Dave, listen, I'm my second term on the council, but my first term, we did have a lot of the certioraries come up. And as Dan said, they did dwindle down. But is it usual to have that amount of certioraries over the first few years that you get that done? Because spending $1 million and seeing all these changes come through kind of really, it kind of makes, for me, I just have to question because I don't have the background in what you do. So I have to just ask the question, is this something that's normal? Would you find that have been abnormal? And as we move forward into this process, is there anything abnormal that you see that could happen here to expand out that expense of your guidance in this process?
Good question. I just want to say one thing. GAR's been in existence for 50, almost 60 years. And we worked in various communities through New York State. I think mass appraisal is mass appraisal. And it's very difficult, certainly when you have a municipality that was at 14% that goes to 100%. Now, I could explain the equalization rate in the process, but ultimately, to boil it down, you had a ton of inequities, residential and commercial. You had some tax surcharges before we got here and conducted the reassessment project. Part of the issue is that there are some assumptions that need to be made. Now, while we do our research and we have familiarity with the market, we can't force anybody, number one, we can't force anybody to let us into the property. And as it relates to commercial properties, there's income and expense, there's an income stream and an income approach where we do have to make some assumptions. And we don't get that information at the onset. Unfortunately, Dan can speak to this, where you do get that information is through litigation.
Yeah.
Now, to answer your original question, in our experience in doing this in all over New York State, I don't think that there was the number and the amount of tax surcharges shouldn't be an indication of the success of the project. And you got 100%. There were a lot of people, I don't want to say they were happy about paying property taxes, as you know that they weren't, but there was fair and equitable assessments that were determined. Unfortunately, on some of the commercial side, we try and we do our best. I mean, we mailed out, just so that everybody's clear, we mail out an I&E statement at the onset of the project. While we did get some returns, we also too had an informal review process where property owners, commercially and residentially, have an opportunity to meet with us prior to the tentative roll being filed May 1st. Now, some commercial properties did go through that process, got reductions were warranted, some didn't. And the roll is filed and it went to grievance and eventually tax surgery. So we had a pretty large public relations campaign to try to circumvent some of the litigation.
Get the information.
It's just sort of an unfortunate consequence is that when you do a historic project, albeit successful, you're still going to have some pending litigation.
Yep.
And at least in the first year. And now as we've, and also too, there was really, in 2013 was sort of the cusp of some large redevelopment and projects that occurred. I mean, there was really sort of a trend that was the beginning of the trend, I should say. And it really is still progressed to the point where you're at the point now where there's just a lot of development and a lot of building and a lot of things going on, which is good news.
Yeah.
But to your original question, I don't think there was any more, in our experience in doing this, I don't think there was any more than would be a typical project that you would have with those extenuating circumstances of going from 14 to 100.
Yeah.
Really, I think it was 40, 50 years since a comprehensive reassessment project was completed.
Thank you for the answer.
And just so the council's aware, there is a clause, Councilmember Cummings asked, should we budget for this annually? There is a clause in here that if both parties agree, there could be a 1-year extension on this contract. So, you know, potentially, you are looking at a potential 2-year, just so folks are aware.
If we authorize it.
If we authorize, correct. So, okay. Any more questions? And, you know, Dave, I do appreciate you coming here. You're from, did I see Amherst? Where's your?
We have 2 offices, Amherst and Clifton Park.
Okay.
I live locally.
Gotcha, cool. All right, thank you so much for being here. And I want you to know, I'm certainly not pinpointing my upsetness or whatever with the reassessment totally on your back. Okay? All right. Thank you. Further discussion by the council. We have a motion, we have a second. Resolution 28. How about we take slow roll to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract with GAR. Councilmember Gully.
Yes.
Councilmember, I apologize. Councilmember Garrett.
Yes.
Councilmember Parator.
Yes.
Councilmember Cummings.
Yes.
Councilmember December.
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Yes.
And I will be the sole no. Council President Mantello. It will move to the regular meeting for May 6-1. Resolution 28. Resolution 29, we are going to hold it. Resolution 30. Resolution 29, just so you know, may not go until the May finance. So I'll keep folks posted, but Steve Strikeman asked us to hold that. Resolution 30, resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute the tactical team joint services agreement with the town of Colony. Council President Mantello at the request of the administration. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, Councilmember Parator. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Gully. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 30 carries 7-0. Resolution 31. I have to, before we approach this, right before the meeting, Peter Grimm, and I know he reached out to Councilmember December and Cummings regarding this resolution, and he is totally for a dog park. However, the Northwest Quadrant was actually one of the areas he is requesting it not be looked at. And I guess the Friends group, when they met with James and Laura, they expressed that it's taken a long time to get the underutilized portions of the park utilized. And this was an area that they really wanted. They have a little bit of money. They'd like to get some picnic tables up and utilize that area, even though it looks like it's underutilized. Their whole mission is to get those underutilized utilized. So they do have a plan. He would request, and he wants to not, obviously detract us or anything, but we want this to be a really good working relationship with the Friends group. And he really, on behalf of the Friends group, would like us to look at the park that actually has, I shouldn't say the park, but the portion of the park that was kind of designated, I think, in a prior administration, and it's more in the eastern part of the park, and it has a little parking lot, and he said it could be used 12 months out of the year, where the Northwest Quadrant, people would actually have to walk through the snow to get there because you can't take your cars up. It's closed in the winter. So saying that, all I would ask, can we table this tonight and request the committee, Laura, and maybe James, to sit down with the Friends group and just re-look at the location. Councilmember
I'll
Kennedy.
speak to that.
Yep, please.
Yeah, based on my understanding of the Friends of group, personally, me as a citizen and a council member, not satisfied, and I would probably not delay this table list based on their verbal request. If they do have concerns with the report that we can adopt based on why the report is being adopted in the first place, they can submit in writing, and if it needs to be amended at the time, it can be. We can take their comments into consideration, but I don't believe they have been helpful in any capacity in the process that we underwent to determine locations, what have you, and recommendations for the dog park. But I welcome, their input and their collaboration, and this definitely want to have their support, but I don't believe delaying this would serve any purpose.
Council President?
Yeah, and if I, on that note, I've been involved where there's been passion on both sides, I swear, developers, Scenic Hudson. I truly believe that we can get all sides to agree. And I just think, tabling it tonight, only tables it tonight, we can bring it back up. I can have a finance before the regular meeting, and over the next 2 weeks, we can have both groups meet with each other. That's all. And I think by passing it, it just sends a message, oh, we're not listening. And I don't want it to have a bad vibe. I want it to be successful, and I think it just sends a really bad message.
Council President, can I ask Deputy Mayor, she looked like it might have some more insight on the relationship with the Friends.
Yeah, for the record, I just want to say that is not the administration's position with the Friends of Group. We have a great partnership with the Friends of Group. We work with the Troy Tennis Association. They're trying to bring a Frisbee golf group in.
Right. I didn't say it there.
No, I'm not saying you.
Okay.
I'm saying just in general, I don't want it to be on the record and heard in the public that we don't have a good relationship, because we have great partnerships with them.
Right.
They provide grant money. They provide a lot of funding. They're buying picnic tables for us, grills, water fountains. They do a lot to contribute to that park. We did the Garnet Douglas signage.
Yes.
They helped with the sign. They helped clean up. So I will tell you that I think that there's more outreach that needs to be done with this committee. I know James is on this committee, but I don't think it has been vetted through the planning commission or through the planning itself. Steve Strikeman has not seen this other than on the agenda. So I think there's a lot more steps that need to be done in order to make sure it's an inclusive process and you get everybody's input rather than just the committee itself. That being said, I think it's really important to take the Friends of Group. They've been established for a very long time. They have a lot of ability, and they do partner well with the city as well too.
And I agree. And real quick, Monica, I did want you to know, I did put language in that before anything, even the implementation, that an implementation plan would be developed in conjunction with the planning commissioner, the planning department, and the administration. It's at the end of the reso, just so you know, to put that in.
Yeah.
Yep, Councilmember December and then Councilmember Cummings.
I was just going to say that I did receive a call in my conversations with Laura. I know there were initial conversations with the Friends group. I don't think the pieces that were discussed, the information I heard about new park benches was clear. And so from my position, I think if we need to table it, to make sure we can get all parties on board, I'm supportive of that idea.
And I do agree. I want you to know, Councilmember Kennedy, Councilmember Cummings.
Right, I wanted to clarify as well. I also spoke with Legislator Trim, and the core issue here, it sounds like the Friends group has an existing plan to really activate that area designated in red as the primary location in the report. And it sounds like a good plan to really extend the picnic area in a meaningful way. And so given that new information, I think it is important to make a couple changes here in collaboration with the Dog Park Committee. So I'm also in support of tabling it for now and working with both of these groups to reflect those changes. And I think it sounds like there's a lot of desire from all sides to work together towards this shared goal.
And I do want to express, I love your passion, Councilmember Kennedy, I do. And, you know, we want this to become a reality. Think about it, it's been talked about for so long. So let's not get bogged down in the weeds and let's fix this. And I do believe that we can help facilitate that. So, on that,
Can I ask a question?
Councilmember, please.
When was this supposed to be taking place? I'm sorry. When was the expected date for this park to start? Because I'm confused on why we are focused on adult park and Seventh Avenue Park has nowhere been like done yet or even processed. We just got a map of what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
So adult park to me, I'm so not voting for this. It's not important.
This is just the report. It's got a long road
Oh, okay.
ahead.
Just
Yeah.
checking.
Just a
This
report.
is just to accept the report.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no, detailed plans. An implementation plan would have to be put together and a lot of steps. Yep. So we have a motion. I'll make a motion to table. Do we have a second? Second, Councilmember Parator and everyone probably. Discussion further? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so 31's tabled. And before we adjourn, I just want to thank everyone for this healthy discussion, debate, and have a wonderful evening and a happy Easter and happy Passover.
That's
We
right.
have a special
Happy Easter,
meeting, so
everybody.
Please hang out for the Sustainability Task Force.
Oh, that's
Yes,
right.
it'll be a couple minutes. Motion to adjourn, second, motion